The reason why we want to build a brand is because we don't want to compete with price. If you don't have a brand, then you have a commodity. That means that you're similar like everyone else. And what happens when people don't know the difference? They will probably go with the lowest price. So that's why you want to have a brand. You just don't want to sell a product. You want to sell more value than just the product.
What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us for another episode on Maverick Culture. And today, I am so excited to be interviewing someone that I consider a dear friend, not just simply in the space of business and marketing and branding, but someone that I've been able to meet personally. And they have just been such a huge gift to my life, even though we've interacted a little bit. You know, when you just meet those people, you just resonate with them and they have such a hospitable soul. That's who we get to talk to today, my good friend, Anneli. Anneli, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm actually really, really excited to be here. So,
for those who have not heard of Anneli and don't know anything about you or what you do, just real quick, briefly, how would you introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm a middle-aged woman from Sweden. I'm proud of that. No, but seriously, I've been doing this forever. And when I say forever, it's basically like straight from school, starting working sales, marketing, branding. So it's been like 30 years.
That's
about
awesome.
30 years. Yeah. So that's,
it.
and like I said, I mean, I do think I'm a little bit of a weird hybrid of things, you know, because I have the sales background and I love selling. And then I have the marketing background. I'm being in agencies and I started my own agency. And then I have the branding background. So I have like design thinking, business development, marketing strategy. And then I was like, what if I could be on the client side? So then I was a CMO for 5 years for a multi-billion-dollar brand and had a huge budget and worked with 7 agencies at the same time. So I literally have been working from the smallest local brands with 0 budget to big brands like Coca-Cola, Levi, Volvo, and others.
So I need to tell everyone, this is a quick, funny story about Anneli talking about the brands that she's been able to work with. So Anneli and I, we've been able to meet in person. We actually met on a fishing trip in Canada, which we might get into more of that in just a second. But during the trip, Anneli, her hand was hurting. And so we're trying to figure out like, oh, do we have any medicine? Like, what can we give her and all that stuff like that. And so I was, as you guys can tell, Anneli, she mentioned earlier, she's from Sweden. And I was trying to communicate with her like, hey, I have ibuprofen. Do you want to take some ibuprofen for your hand hurting? So I'm trying to like talk to her about ibuprofen, and she's not understanding the drug that I'm talking about, the medicine that I'm talking about. So I like run a Google search, the ibuprofen equivalent, like in Sweden, like what is it called? What is it? So I type it in, it pulls up this name, I show it to her, and as I'm reading, it's like, oh yeah, this is like the largest distributor of ibuprofen in Sweden, all the stuff like that. And I'm like, is this familiar to you? And Anneli looks at it and she goes, oh yeah, those are clients of mine. So she means it when she says that she really has worked with brands and, you know, businesses from all over. Well, talk to us about that. I mean, you just given this overview of, you know, all the companies you've worked with, going from branding to marketing to sales. How does a young woman from Sweden get into this whole world of business and marketing and sales and working from 0 budget companies all the way to multi-billion-dollar companies? What's that like?
You know, it's a pretty sweet story. Okay, so here's how it starts. Like, I'm from an island south of Stockholm, and this island is like 400 people living there. So in my class, we were 4 people. Okay, so 30 people in the entire school. So you can just imagine it's a really small island, right? So coming from that place, I didn't even know what a brand was. Like, I literally did not know. I think we had like secondhand clothes. Or sometimes I think my mom or my aunt made like our clothes. I don't know. I don't even remember. I just know it wasn't a big deal. But then when I was 13, we had to go into town to a new school, you know? And then you're 30 in a class. And for the first time, I start to realize like there's something called brands, and people, care about the fashion and brands and stuff. And I was like, okay. And I knew what everyone wanted. I'm 51, so this is like a couple of years ago. So like everyone wanted a pair of Levi's. Like that was the thing, And in the US, it might be like a low budget thing, but here in Sweden was like really, if you had a Levi's, that was like the thing. I probably had from H&M or something, but Levi's. And I remember telling my dad, I'm like, oh my God, I really want Levi's. And I knew he was going to say, it's too expensive. You can't have it. But my dad was like, when I said I need a pair of jeans, and Dad said, yeah, let's go buy some, pair of Levi's. I'm like, what? And he's like, that's what I wear. Is that not good enough for you? I'm like, sure it is, but let's go before Mom hears this. He doesn't understand that this is expensive stuff, We go to the store, I get my pair, I wear them like every day, And this story is, the reason was not because I was like, oh, I need those because I really like how they look like. It was the core of what a brand is. It was about belonging. And that is brands for me. It's like I wanted to belong to that group of girls, Yeah. And the ticket was my Levi's.
Yeah.
So that was status. That was like the belonging. So that's kind of where I learned what a brand means. And long story short, I'm like 25 maybe, 24, 25. Get my first job at an agency after sales, doing sales for years because I did not have any education. My first job, I really talk myself into that agency. They have hundreds of people want to work there. I'm just, the only thing I can is to talk to people, So I'm like, they're like, we have so many people want to work here. I'm like, yeah, but you have no one like me. I promise you that, just give me a chance to, meet up with me. And they give me that chance. And I'm like, here I am, you will not regret. By the way, I just want you to pay for my school for 2 years to a private school because I don't have any education, but otherwise I'm really great, and they do. And you know what happens? The first client I get to work with is Levi's.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that cool? I'm like, I just love
That's crazy.
That. That's crazy.
That is crazy. I was going to make a joke about that. I was going to make a joke that the reason why they picked you is because you still had those same Levi jeans and you were still wearing them. And they were like, that's the status right there. We know exactly. That's so cool that came full circle for you. Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, the thing that was like the status symbol. And I remember it's so funny you talk about like people when that moment is that you recognize the power of brand. And mine actually is about school as well. It's when I was in high school. Obviously at that point, like I knew about brands, but I didn't have as much of an actual like conscious awareness of them. They just kind of existed in the background. But when I went to high school, all the cool guys had we had uniforms, so you had to wear khaki pants. Oh. But there was like the Walmart khaki pants that almost looked like this kind of off-white khaki color, and they fit like cardboard. But then there were these dark khaki pants from Hollister, and that's like what all the cool guys wore. And I was just like, I need khaki pants from Hollister. Except my mom was the first person I talked to about that, and it was a no, and we never got the Hollister khaki pants. So that I wasn't able to end up making it happen. Yeah, but it is funny like how at such a young age you tap into that thing of brand. So now that we've already brought that up, Anneli, define for the people listening, what is a brand?
Okay, so a lot of people, and I think this is like, if you feel this way, you don't have to feel, bad about that, because there are CEOs at big companies who say this, and they point at the logo and they say, this is our brand. Like, no, that's not your brand. That's your logo. So a brand is your reputation. It's what people say about you as a person or as a company or a product or an organization. So that what people think and feel about you, that is the brand. Easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So whenever you are approaching brand strategy, right? So if a brand is something that people feel about you, and you are a brand strategist, so you're working with businesses to approach their brand from a strategic standpoint.
Yeah.
What does that kind of process look like? Because you talked about how a lot of people do make that association, and a lot of people that I work with still do. Yeah, it's like, well, here's my logo, or here's my fonts, this is our colors, therefore this is our brand.
Yeah.
So you introduce this new idea to them of, well, a brand is not, it's not that, it's how people feel about you. So how does one strategically approach creating a brand?
Yeah. Okay. So we have to break that down a little bit, like the words brand strategy first, and then I can go into more about how to do it. But okay, so if a brand is how people think and feel about you, that's like with fancy word like brand perception, right? So how people perceive you. So what we want to do in a strategy, if we have the definition of a strategy, is a long-term plan. So basically we can think about like A to B. Current state, decide future state. There's always a gap between where we are today and where we want to be. So the strategy always is like to identify that gap and to close that gap. That's strategy. So if we put those two things together, then there is a current place where it's a current state where how people actually perceive your company or person, whatever brand we talk about, the perception today, and then how you want people to perceive the brand. And my job as a brand strategist is to identify the current state, the desired future state, what the gap is in between, and how to close that gap. So that's what strategy means. Strategy needs to be like a plan of how to actually do something. So it's not just about talking about who you are. It's also like, how do you want to be perceived, and how are we going to shape and influence people's perception?
Well, and that's encouraging to hear that you are assessing where someone is, and there is something to do about that. Because I do think there are some businesses that they maybe take that next step in thinking that they've been a little bit more intentional with brand strategy, because maybe they've written out a mission statement or a vision statement. Like they have ideas that they want people. It's almost like just information. Like they have information that they want people to associate with them. However, they don't think about, okay, that's good information, but that does not touch to the emotional part of how people feel about that kind of information. So now that we know what strategy is, how are you assessing where someone currently is and where you want them to be? And I'm sorry if I'm loading it with a lot of questions, so tease it out or break it down however you want to. But then also specifically from that vantage point of a feeling, because I think that's something that even as I think about, what do I want people to feel about me and my brand, that becomes a much more abstract thing, I think, for many people to try to identify. So if someone is stepping back and they're going, okay, a brand is my reputation, how people feel about my business. I want to assess where I currently am. I, want to make that, see where I need to be, and then what's that gap in the middle. How does one assess where they are with how people feel about them?
Okay, so I think, first of all, what I want to say, because I think a lot of people struggle with like, what's marketing? What's branding? How are these concepts working together? So maybe we just like define that a little bit first. So if you want to build a brand, and the reason, let's talk about that first. The reason why we want to build a brand is because we don't want to compete with price. That's a simple answer.
That's a great answer.
So if you don't have a brand, then you have a commodity. That means that you're similar like everyone else. And what happens when people don't know the difference? They don't have an emotional attachment to it at all. It's different products. They will probably go with the lowest price. And you don't want to ever have to compete. So that's why you want to have a brand. You just don't want to sell a product. You want to sell more value than just the product. Extended value. That's why you want to have a brand. Okay, so when you want to build this brand, then the first thing you need to think about is, how do we make people know about that the brand exists? That is what we call brand awareness. If people don't know about you, then you actually don't even have a brand. So this is where a lot of branding people, this is where the branding people don't like me, because now I'm stepping into the marketing kind of side of me. It's like, you have to tell people that you exist. Brand awareness is putting the word out there that you actually exist, so people know about you. And that's what we call marketing. So we just need to do that. We need to tell the world that we exist, or at least the people we want to reach out to. That is brand awareness. That comes first. Okay? So marketing is telling people about us, so people know about us. Branding is more so people feel and think about us. That's the difference. So back to the brand again, and the strategy is the same way as you have an identity as a person. That's why we also talk about personal brands. Then we say it's kind of easy with a personal brand because you know who you are. At least if you have some self-awareness, you know who you are, you accepted yourself, and now you have an identity that you want to show up as. When you have a company, it's a little bit more complicated. Say that you're a smaller company with 10 employees or 20 employees, but that's still 20 different people. So now you will have a company culture. And what if not everyone agree about everything? What is the identity of the company? What is the identity of the brand? So here is where a brand strategy comes in. So before we can even tell the world who we are, we need to know who we are. So brand strategy starts with getting clarity around who you are. So all these fancy things people talk about, like purpose and mission and vision and all these things, that comes from the core, the DNA of who you are, what you believe in, why you exist, what you want to see in the world, and what you want to become. All these things is connected to the identity of the brand. And my job as a brand strategist is not telling you this, it's facilitating and asking you questions, and the company have all the answers. I don't give any answers. I'm like a coach. I ask questions. So that it's about clarity, bringing clarity around who you are. That's the first step of everything.
Yeah, real quick, that thought you shared earlier, that a brand is something you want to build because you don't want to compete on price.
Yeah.
That's such a clear answer. I was even thinking like in a very simplified example.
Yeah.
And again, obviously I would not say this is the totality of a brand, but it speaks a lot to it speaks a lot to what you're saying. I even think of like, what's something that it's very difficult to try to convey the fullness of your brand. I would say it's on a platform like Amazon. When people are searching it, it's primarily product driven. And so they're just looking at like, this image of the product, and then they're quickly, clicking and looking at things. But to your point about your brand being your reputation, and how when you have the right reputation, then you don't need to compete on price.
Yeah.
The two things everyone's looking for on Amazon. The first thing, or I don't even want to say the first thing because I don't even think it's primary, but you're looking at two things. One, the price of the item, but secondly, you are looking at the reviews. And that is like this simplified it's like the quick way to try to assess the reputation of a product. And I am more than willing, like if I see a product and the price is lower, however, if it has like a 3.2, star reviews and there's only about, 6 reviews on the product, I would pay double or triple the price for the same product, but the reviews, they have a 4.9, they have over 1,000 reviews because ultimately that's conveying reputation. And I think so many businesses, when they think about how do they compete in the market, price is that thing that they will spend a lot of focus on. But when you have a brand, it allows you to sidestep that part of competing. That's so clear.
And I think if we're looking for another word that kind of summarize everything you just said, it's trust. Because if you trust someone and you look at reviews and you feel that trust, because it doesn't matter if something is a little bit more expensive or more money that you need to invest, to make the wrong decision when you buy something could be even more expensive. So trust is extremely important. Trust, status, belonging, the story that they tell. It's like the whole package, right? So it starts with a really good product. Like you said, like the product needs to be really good. But that's just the starting point. But then you have this emotional connection too. So for example, one of my favorite brands are Swedish, Oatly, like oat milk, Oatly. And I love their story. They talk about it's like milk, but for humans. I mean, only that, how brilliant is that, So it doesn't matter if their product is like the same level of like, I don't even compare the taste of it, but it's like, it's a good product. But it's not just that. It's what they stand for. It's what they believe in. It's what they take stand for. And all their design and messaging and everything. I just vibe with that brand. So I don't even look at the price when I buy it.
So you help to differentiate. One of the questions that came to my mind as you were describing that, you help differentiate that there is a separation that's happening between branding and marketing, where some people would maybe conflate the two or confuse the two. There's a separation that's there. Before then, would you create a separation between brand strategy and business strategy or business planning, business model? How do those relate to one another?
Okay. Business strategy is first. That's like the whole for the organization, how we structure the company and all of that. Okay. Then in my world comes brand strategy. And brand strategy is like a combination of strategic branding and, in my case, how I do it, also marketing strategy. So I think there's like easy to get into two silos of this is the marketing team, this is the branding team, but they are really intertwined and they need to be that because it's really important. I get a lot of, no, I wouldn't say hate, but I'm not super popular by marketing people sometimes when I say that it all starts with a corporate brand and then comes marketing strategy after. And they're like, no, Anneli, haven't you read Philip Kotler, the 4 Ps? I'm like, I know about Philip Kotler. I studied him like 30 years ago in school. But, it's a different time now too. And the 4 Ps are, so when you talk about marketing, a lot of people think about tactical things like, Facebook ads or email marketing and all these things, events, PR. But the 4 Ps are talking about the product you have, price, how you price it, place, which is how you distribute it, and then promotion. So what we call like promotion, marketing, advertising is just like one part, 25% of it. But before we even do this, we need to know, we have a name of the company. We still have a reputation. We need to know who we are, why we exist, the mission and the vision and the values. Like for me, that's like the heart. It's the soul of a company. Why do you even start this company from start? Like that comes before all of these things. So that's how they kind of are connected. Like who we are is branding, the person who we are. And then the marketing is like how we get our word out to the market and getting known.
So whenever you're working with a business and you are, you're taking them through this journey and you want to start with building out that thing of identity.
Yeah.
Because that really, from that flows, like you were saying, the mission and the vision and the values and stuff.
Yeah.
What's the framework? And again, I'm not asking you to give out all your trade secrets,
No,
right?
I'm happy to give out everything. I don't hold anything back.
Well, I love it then. So how then do you help a business, they're looking at things corporately.
Yeah.
How do they articulate the identity? Like when you say that, what ultimately are you getting at for them to be able to convey?
To know who they are. Okay, so first of all, when I have like 3 different steps that I go through. And I think everyone who listens to this, who are in a company, you know that if you're more than one person, you will not agree about everything. So sometimes I do, sessions with a married couple and they're like start arguing about what they want with the company. I'm like, haven't you talked about this before? So that's really, really, really normal, So I always say, I bring clarity, I help with alignment, and I help with direction. That's my job. Okay. So clarity around things, alignment for a group of people, because you will have different opinions about that. And my job is to facilitate and get you on the same page, agreeing about something. And then what direction are we heading in? So we actually know that. That's the strategy. So for identity then, I think it's really important that we look at the company, the brand. When I say company brand, what I mean then is the company brand, the corporate brand, because you can have product brands too, but the company brand. We look at it and we try to see it as a person. So the same way as you create like a persona and you talk about your audience, I think about the company the same way. But if you're 30 people working there, you can't have 30 different brands. So you need to align around one voice, one persona that will represent this brand. So that is what we do. So we really look into like, where do we want to be? Like, this is the vision. It's like, if we would see the perfect future where everything would be exactly like we want it to be, that's our vision. It's like aiming towards the star, our North Star, that's our vision. And then we can break that down into goals, but that's the vision. The mission is more of how do we make that happen? So if the vision is more the what we will become, then the mission is like, how do we make this reality? What are we doing every day to make this happen? Okay. And then the purpose is really more about like, why do we exist? Why did this company start from the beginning? And why this is really important is because we might think that people work for a company because they just want high salary or, status of working there. But people actually care a lot about the story with the company. Like, why did this company start? What are we building together? What am I part of? Like, I want to know as an employee. And other people that you will tell that story for, they also want to know. They want to hear the founder's story. Like, why do you exist? So that's what we do when we talk about purpose. So those 3 things, purpose, mission, vision, they're really like the core stories of the company. And to be totally honest, most people don't think about this so much. So when I help people to get clarity around this, I just guide people and ask questions. It's almost like a therapy session. And I go deeper. Yeah. And most people start to cry.
Wow.
There are really tough CEOs, often men, they tear up a little bit because
Yeah.
I think they haven't really thought about it, and the company means more to them that they might want to admit. And when someone gives them space to open up about sharing their story, and they start to think about something, maybe there's a connection to a grandma said something about something, that's why they started, or some relationship with their dad, whatever it is, it just brings a lot of emotions. So to finding that kind of heart and soul, you want to have that because that's what connects to people. So that's the first step that I do. And then we break down that vision and to see together with like the business strategy and the business goals. So what does that mean? Like, how can we measure success for the brand? What can we measure? Can we measure that perception we talk about? Can we measure awareness? Can we measure loyalty for the brand? All these things actually affect the value of a brand too, if you want to sell a company. So it's important to talk about how do we measure this long term. And then when we're done with that, I talk about values because I think that's so important to act, from towards your values. And that is often like a combination of talking about values and personality at the same time, because values is what you deeply believe in. And then your personality is like, what do you call that? Like, it's just the next step after values. Like, how do you live your values? How do you show up in the world? That's your brand personality. So your tone of voice and kind of if you were a person, what would you look like? How would you talk? How would you like show up? That's the personality. So that's the first steps. I call that purpose and personality because I have a 6P framework. So those are the two first P, and that is like your core identity, who you are as a business.
You're responding to the marketing P's with the branding P's.
Yeah, that's my branding piece. Yeah.
I like it. Help me with this because so I've noticed this. I can only imagine that you have dealt with this time and time again. What advice would you have for me? So I am just speaking personally as a business owner, but I'm hoping that through this, other business owners can also maybe slow down a little bit. I've encountered where, again, I'm not primarily a brand strategist, but like you mentioned, marketing really needs robust brand strategy to maximize itself and to really be at its best. I've had conversations with businesses that maybe they hear about the importance of branding and brand strategy. And so they go, okay, because I see how this will benefit marketing, how this connects to the ROI, like, okay, I'm willing to go through the process. But then what ends up happening, you try to start, at least for me, I'll sometimes start to have that conversation and I can almost feel this impatience from the decision maker, the business owner. It's kind of like a, look, like, can we hurry up and just get through this? And I don't feel like they're slowing down to really get into that place. I have had business owners where we're having that conversation. They understand the why. They're willing to patiently go through that process. They are getting that clarity. You see the light bulb going off, right? But then there's those other business owners, well, like you said, like it's in there and I just need to ask questions and pull it out. But you can sense they're almost getting impatient or frustrated or like, again, let's move along. Yeah. How do you handle those kind of conversations and when you feel that happening with the client? Because just to be candid, sometimes I can just let that make me uncomfortable and almost just, okay, well, that's good enough, right? And I can tell we haven't quite penetrated like we need to, but I'm feeling that resistance. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is good enough for now. Maybe we'll, get deeper later or something like that. So just any thoughts or advice about that?
It is. And I can say that, there's so much research that shows, because I've been working a lot with brand marketing and performance marketing. Some people call it direct marketing. So we need to make that definition clear too. Brand marketing is really long term to build that value, that connection with the brand. And you use a lot of storytelling and a lot of emotional connection. When you think about those like big commercials with like, Nike, Apple, all these big brands, we're like, that's brand marketing. That's when we feel something, a story is being told, Super Bowl like commercials thing. That's brand marketing. Performance marketing or direct marketing, that's more tactic. It's like sales driven. Here, come and buy. We look at return on investment. We measure conversion. It's like buy, buy, buy. The thing is, when we look at those two things together, if we only do short term, which a lot of people do the mistake of doing, especially with digital marketing today, and we get so like excited about measuring everything because we can't measure the brand marketing the same way. So we're like, what if we waste money? Let's do this short term instead. Sales, sales, sales. And people are like, oh my God, I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm so tired of your sales message, But all the research shows that if you have a combination of those two, there's no exact number how you would do it, but there's like a good starting point of 60% of brand marketing, 40% that is more sales driven. If you do that, then you actually have so much better effect on your marketing. Everything shows that that is the case. And still we have most companies out there just selling, selling, selling. And people don't want to be sold to, they want to buy. So it goes against everything in human psychology that we just like tell people to buy, buy, buy all the time. We need to give them a reason to. So back to your question, why do we want people to stay in this a little bit longer, figuring out their why they exist, why people should care? Because we need to have a reason for people to listen to their story. If they're not a story, people don't care. If they don't care, they just have to do this sales-driven advertising that make people don't like you anymore. And what happens after a while is the effect are going down. And then it's really difficult to get that up again. So that's why we need to stop a little bit and like, who we are, that doesn't change when you figure that out. It's not that you change identity, who you are. You can change who you talk to. You can also change how you position yourself and the strategy, how you do it. But the first part that people think is a fluffy thing, that's not fluffy. That's called identity, who you are. We need to figure that out first because that's why people want to work at your company too, especially younger people, especially people who are like top talents, because they don't just care about the money. They also want to make a positive impact or do something. They need that story.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, something I can probably do better in, even when I'm having those conversations, is when I'm noticing or I'm feeling from that decision maker or whomever I'm talking to, that they want to kind of hurry things up and they want to make things a little rushed. Even me just kind of slowing down the conversation and just acknowledging that, even saying, hey, I could be wrong about this. Are you feeling a little impatient about this, or is this taking a little too long for you? If so, why? Because maybe it hasn't quite sunk down. Like maybe there's like kind of the superficial, okay, I understand that it's valuable, but like deep down, they don't really believe it. And so even for you, the way that you articulated the value, I don't think I've ever done it in a way that it's that clear, right? To where they finally are going, okay, let me not just simply acknowledge that this is true, kind of just give mental assent, but I really need to believe in this. And see the value behind it.
You know what you can do? That I just actually came up with that now. I haven't done it myself, but I did it when I teach brand strategy. So sometimes I bring like a product or something that I know people know about, and then we see the result of it. So because this could be fluffy, this is difficult to understand. It's like, what is strategy? Like a document on a paper? Like, we don't need that. We just need to make the things work, So I bring like maybe a package of Oatly or whatever it is, Nike shoes, something, okay? And they were like, this is how they show up in the store. But why do they have this copy? Why does the package look like this? Why does the ad look like that? How did they come up with what to write? And then we just backtracking until we get to that place where we actually understand who they are and their identity and their story. That's where it starts. So what you can do, or anyone listening here, think about a brand that you have an emotional connection to. That might be like, I don't know, a clothing brand. It might be like a fashion brand. It might be a sports brand, whatever it is. Like, what is your emotional connection to that? What is the story behind that brand? Do you know the story? Because if you understand that story, if you know why Apple exists, or you know about Nike's story, what they want us to feel, then we can think about how would we translate that to your business? What would that look like for your business? What's your story? What do you care about? Because then it makes it a little bit maybe easier. So even if you have a business to business, it doesn't matter. Like, we're doing business with other people. We think that it's like, just because it's business to business, it's like robots. No, it's human to human, people to people.
That's a great approach, because it does I even like how you talked about even including something like maybe it's a sports brand.
Yeah.
Because again, I think when we get into business conversations and we talk about brand, everyone is just kind of centered on like, oh, let me just think of what we would consider like the stereotypical business. But I would even imagine, me having conversations with some CEOs and even using that as an example, because maybe they're going to feel a little resistant to the idea. And, I don't know. They like to think that all they care about is just, I'm practical, I'm pragmatic, I'm logical. Yeah. But you bring up a sports brand and maybe there's not, other than like a ticket you buy, maybe there's not always something you are buying, but you're giving it attention and you are affiliating with it. Like, what is it? And that will help them realize like, okay, that is something I do want for my business. Like, I want people to feel, I may not, I might feel a little impatient, or I might not, want to be in this conversation for another hour, but I do want people to feel that when it comes to my business.
Yes.
Okay. So like, let's keep pushing so we can get
exactly. There. So we're like, now we know who we are. We know the identity. The first two P's are purpose and personality. Now it's time to look out in the market, because this is the next problem. If you don't have this foundation, is who do you really talk to? There is an expression, if you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. Okay, so it's really expensive to just talk to everyone, especially if you're a small company. Like, you have to decide, where are we going to put our effort? Like, I think about it a little bit when I work with smaller companies, that I'm like having their budget, their wallet. And I'm like, I want to make sure that every single dollar you invest need to be the best investment. If you're talking to all of these people, you have no idea about that. So we need to decide about who is our target audience. And not only that, who are these like personas representing this target audience that is a little bit bigger? Who are they? And can we see a person in front of us that we call persona? Do we know what struggles they have? So we can actually talk not about how great we are. We want to talk about how we solve their problem. That's how they will feel seen and heard and understood and actually want to work with us. So we know who we are. We need to know who we talk to. So I see myself as a matchmaker, which happened to be one of my first job too. Yeah. Before the Levi story, I was I was a real matchmaker. Yeah, until the cop took the company. Yeah.
Okay,
we have to circle back to that later. It's a crazy story. Yeah,
that's a very interesting story. I'd love to hear about that.
So I was a matchmaker. So what we're basically doing here is like dating. It's like matchmaking.
Yeah,
the company are one persona, one person. And the people you want to talk to represents of another person, and these two are going to go on a date. That's like how I see it in my head. And when we know this, we know a lot about them, that actually their needs and their wants and their dreams and how we can help them solve their problems. And then we just need to look into the market. Who are our competitors? How do we want to position ourselves so we actually are a little bit different from everyone else? Because we don't want to compete with price. So we want to have that extra, that makes us different. So we need to understand the value proposition of what kind of value do we give people? Okay, we look at the SWOT analysis. You see, there are a lot of marketing stuff here in my brand strategy. So we look at the SWOT and what are our strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats in the market? Who do we want to compete against? Where do we put down the flag, like our flag, to say, this is what we are. This is our positioning. This is how we want people to think and feel about us. That's the positioning. And then, so now we have purpose and personality inside. Out in the market is people and positioning. And then the only thing that is left is actually to create a plan. So I call that planning. That's how are we going to make this happen? So what is the challenge now? We know who we are. We know how we want to position ourselves. So where is our A and B? Where are we? Where do we want to go? And what stands in our way to actually get to that place? How are we going to get there to actually invest our marketing and branding budget the best way to get to that result? And all this together is what I do in a brand strategy. So you see, there's really good thing to know both marketing strategy and branding.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. And so you can just go ahead and let everyone know what your Venmo account is so they can just send you money after giving us.
If you go slowly back and take one step at a time, you don't need me.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, there's a lot of value that expert hand, brings in, because you let people get too off in the weeds with how they want people to see them and view them. And you're like, okay, that's a great start, but let's hone it in a little bit more. Well, so last question I want to ask, just kind of on that, as we talk through brand strategy. As I told you before we started recording, a lot of my audience and people listening, it's going to be local business, local service business providers, right? So people that are serving a local market, usually within anywhere like a 10, 15 mile radius, and they're offering services primarily. What, for a company that's at that size, and let's say they've existed for a few years, do you think they need to also take into account and go through a process of figuring out what their brand currently is? So any market research or surveys that they should try to figure out what the current brand is? Or, hey, let's just focus on where we want to be, the right direction, the right move, and that'll carry the weight. We don't have to spend too much time trying to find out how people currently perceive you or feel about you.
I always recommend to do some real research, meaning I actually want to see that gap, how people perceive you. Because you might have a lot of assumptions that you think it's something, and then it might be something totally different. And you don't have to do this. So I have not gone to university. I'm a really hands-on person. So even if I went to school for many, many years, it was still a marketing strategy, but I went to school with a lot of other creative people. So I'm not an Excel sheet person, and I'm very down to earth, this, street style do brand strategy. So if I think about your audience, because I also been working with a lot of companies like that locally, on a local market, I think about, you don't have a budget often when you can invest 20K in research. It doesn't exist. So what can you do? I'm even if you're a super small local business, you know exactly your target audience. You can actually just call, 40, 50 companies and have a survey and ask them, Or you can send it out. Or even if you wouldn't even be like a service provider, it could be like a local pizzeria, whatever, restaurant. Go out in the street, put 2 like kids from school out there, like your kids or something, for 2 days. Tell them what audience you have, in what age you want to ask people. Have them ask people like a survey. Ask 200 people if they know about you, what they think about you, how they perceive you, if they know what you offer. And then you do the same after a year. Just to compare. Like, that doesn't cost anything except from that people you need to hire to do it. We can do everything so simple. It doesn't have to be a big research company coming in for 10, 20K doing something. Sometimes I just call 10, 15 people that I know is exactly in their target audience to just have a conversation and say, you haven't been our clients yet, but you're exactly who we want to work with. Would you mind just having a conversation? I'm really curious how we could really understand your needs. And then you just have a conversation. And you learn so much doing that. So I think a lot of people think it needs to be so complicated, and so oh, do we do the right thing? But what is the right thing? The right thing is to care about people and actually care about what they need and have a conversation with people and not just ChatGPT, real people.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to I've shared that with clients before. I was talking to a client and I was we're working on a strategy and they're locally centered, and I'm like, now look, we're gonna do everything on our end to make sure we got the target persona that when we run these ads, we're gonna do everything we can to target this demographic of people. I'm like, now that said, you though have the ability to actually just call this target market, go knock on their door, go find them. So we're going to lean into a digital strategy. But if this is all we're doing and we're not also, think about my wife and I, we live in a newly built neighborhood. So we're always having people knocking on our doors. Do you need pest control? Do you need security cameras? Do you need whatever? So I'm like, if I was doing marketing with those companies, sure, there's digital marketing things I would do as far as targeting and geofencing and, laying out demographics and stage of life and interests and stuff like that. However, I would also tell them, hey, this target persona that we just crafted, new home buyers, I would also try to just go find new home buyers and talk to them.
Yeah.
But it's very effective targeting.
Give me an example of a typically people listening to this, a service company. What do they sell? Example.
So for example, a few of my clients, they're in the med spa space. So they have med spas, and so that's going to provide services a lot of aesthetic services. So Botox, filler, just things in that laser, hair removal, skin treatment, skin rejuvenation, that whole market. Okay,
so if we think about that example, it would be really easy if you don't talk to people to talk inside out, like we say, oh, we're so great at this. This is all products that we offer. And when we think about it, maybe a lot of people say the same thing. How can I separate that from that? But what if you actually know exactly who you talk to? You have heard their stories, not just about surface level, what they say. You actually gone a little bit deeper, and now you understand their pain points. You understand what they feel shame about. You understand what they dream about, how they want to be perceived, how they want people to talk about them, and how they want to feel about themselves. So now when you create that ad or you talk to them, you can really personalize. You can do for different groups of people, for example, with a message to that person. But you can also talk from a perspective that they will feel, oh my God, are they inside my head? How can they know so much things about me? And that's the difference if you really do research and understand people's motivation to buy, instead of you just want to brag about yourself and your products.
It's so with that, I know I was going to ask one more question, but this made me think of another thing with that. how, when you are doing a brand strategy with the business and you are articulating these things, how much of what you are helping them uncover and you guys are crafting, especially when you're thinking about things like identity and how we want to communicate that in our values, how much of that is being filtered as well through the lens of like a copywriter, if you will? Like, are you trying to also articulate things in a very concise but punchy way, and you're also doing that? Or are you just getting the large contours figured out, and then they would effectively hand that strategy over to a copywriter or someone like that, and they would do okay, I see the big picture. Here's how we can now craft it into the punchy headline or unique value proposition and stuff like that.
I write the value proposition, I write the positioning statement, but that's internal things. That's not what you tell people. Like, that's for your eyes only, your internal document. I always work with copywriters. What I do as a brand strategist is that I do that more bigger picture plan, which is like, how are we going to go from A to B? Which more is like, how do I combine, because it's the whole funnel of building awareness, have people considering you to buy from you, that they actually will buy from you, they will come back, be happy and loyal, and then start recommending you. How do we create that thing? Like, do we work with paid advertising? What can we do in your own channels? Can we work with something with like earned media, like PR? Like, getting that bigger picture of, from the budget you have, knowing the audience you want to talk to, how can I get the best recommendation where you will actually put your money, like the best investment? That's what I do. And then I write a good brief to the creative team. So then we have a copywriter that will start doing the messaging. We have a designer doing the brand identity work. And we have a more tactic marketing person who will actually make sure that all this marketing will be taking out to the market, like with advertising and PR and everything we talk about. So I'm very like strategic, high level, and then I work with people who actually make it happen.
That's awesome. And then I promise this is the last one. Then.
No,
so
but
once you then
I can be here all night long. We have to go back to the matchmaking story too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have like an after hours like conversation, like a post credit scene. Yes. And then we'll just talk about all the matchmaking stuff for anyone who's in the market looking for their love. Maybe that's what you're really here for.
Yes.
You thought you were getting brand strategy for your business, but you're about to find your soulmate.
You had no idea that you were going to meet the prototype of Tinder.
Yeah.
Special gift.
Oh my gosh. So once you hand this off to a business, like they go through that brand strategy, or let's say a business owner, they take the time, they listen through this podcast, and they effectively walk through all those steps, and they kind of craft for themselves a prototype of their brand strategy. Because this is internal language, and that does play a huge part, and you do have a team and employees, and people that are running different parts of the business. What's your encouragement when it comes to, okay, hey, business owner, we've made this, we have this all written out, we have this over to copywriters, designers are working on all this stuff, marketing's working on the tactical side of implementing it. What encouragement or process do you give them to then get this to the team so that the team now is thinking through this brand strategy filter? How does that business owner integrate it internally with their team?
I'm always educating the teams. So like a big part of my work is actually working with the with the team, with the company, everyone in the company. So we talk a lot about like, how do we live the brand? Because branding also, like marketing, okay, now we know we're going to put out the word out there, we have a plan for that. But branding is so much more than the visual. Branding is also how we show up. And how we show up and how we behave is mostly people who work in the company. Like, How is it to visit our office? You know, how do we take care of people? How do we take care of people on customer service? How are our sales conversations? Like all these touch points that we have is branding. So we need to walk the talk, live the brand. So when we do all this work, I like really talk about it hands on. Like, okay, so we talk about values, a little fluffy, but it doesn't get so fluffy when we actually start talking about, give me like 3 examples how we actually live our values in our everyday life. What happens if someone calls and are really mad at us at customer service? How do we talk to that person? That's values, you know? So that's what I do. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. So it's very like hands-on practical. How do we show up? How do we talk? How do we look in all touch points? So that's really important. So it's nothing if we don't have implementation on it. So that's where I kind of come in and I do that work too. So, and also I want to say, when you say when they work on it, it's like, I would not, I mean, in my goal is that because I don't even do client work anymore, like since like 4 years back, unless they're very, very safe and want to work with me. But otherwise I don't. But I would like people to hire people like you and others who can who knows how to do this. Who can facilitate this? Because even if they say, I get it, you know, I can actually listen to what she says, I can read some books and then we can do it. It's not the point. It's like going to therapy with yourself. Like look at yourself in the mirror and go to therapy. Sure, you can do that. You can ask a question, then you can answer the question. But it's like, it will not get so great effect. So you need someone who being your therapist or your facilitator, who actually can facilitate and ask those questions, who can pause and who can say like, okay, I noticed some hesitation when you said that. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
You know, who can pick up on those small things, who can ask to go a little bit deeper, can say, hey, I noticed that you're not saying the same thing here. We have 3 different stories. Like, okay. Who can help people align around this? So that's to have the skills in facilitation is extremely important as a strategist. Some people just come in there and give advice. I don't like that approach because I don't think anyone knows the business as well as you do as the business owner. So that's why facilitation is the best skill to have as a strategist, and facilitation and coaching is really, really similar. I believe that you as a business owner have all the answers within yourself. And if you don't have the answer, the market has the answer, or your potential customers or clients has the answer. I'm just merely there to be the facilitator, to facilitate this. Like a coach, don't go in and give advice. The coach asks really good questions so you get to that answer yourself. And that's my approach to brand strategy. That's why people always should have an advisor, and a facilitator coming in and not an advisor, because it's so easy to just go in and give that what you think is smart advice. But are you sure that that is the right thing to do? And how do you know that? Isn't it maybe better to process it and to create it together with people who work with this like every day? So the best ideas when I work with smaller companies often is when they bring in the people who really meet the customers all the time. So, bring in salespeople or customer service people. The people that never meets the customer or clients are often the executives, because they're in other meetings. So I want to know, like, what are the real customers actually saying? Those are the people who should be in a meeting. So that's why you need a facilitator.
I love the emphasis you're putting on you have the answers. Because I think for a lot of business owners, when they are hiring someone, how often do they just simply want to say, oh, well, you decide, or you pick, or I don't care, and I always love it, no matter how much a business owner says that they don't care, we just want to make more money or whatever. There will be something they care about at some point down the road, right? A color will pop up or a text or something, but oftentimes but it is letting them know, like, no, listen, you're the one on the front line running your business. You know your business. You know your people. I know that, again, you may not want to take the time right now. Maybe you don't see the value, but you can't just hire someone from wherever. Of course, like, this person's going to be the expert. You're going to trust them, but what they're really good at isn't just giving the right answers. It is facilitating and asking the right questions, because you have the answers and we're trying to get those out of you. And that's the reason why.
That is the reason why. And to work with someone the way you express it. Because, to be honest, and I've been on both sides, there are a lot of egos in the creative side. So when I was responsible for a big budget, I had 7 agencies at the same time. When you have 7 agencies and everyone wants to lead the strategy, it's like, hey, I'm the client. I know my business. Can you guys just do what I want you to do right now? We have a strategy here. You're experts in implementing that in different ways. We have events here, PR here, advertising, different things. But I'm the conductor of the brand because I'm the business here. I'm the client. I think the client should actually be the conductor of the brand and not only the marketing person. I think the CEO is the brand owner. I would not work with a smaller company unless under 500 people. I would not work with anyone else than the CEO and the CMO. Because these are decisions that are the highest level in a company, because this is something that has so big value. So when you want to sell a company, you value the brand. That is what you get paid for. So this is not just a nice to have. It's if you don't really invest in this, first of all, you miss a lot of brand equity if you want to sell. If you even think about doing an exit, you should invest in your brand. But not only that, it's how do you even know that you're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks in your marketing? You need to know who you are, who you talk to, how you are different from others, and how you will stand out. If you don't know this, and you don't know exactly where your people actually spend their time, so you know exactly where to reach them, with what message, how often, you're just wasting your money. So if people don't think it's important,
exactly, it's well, that's on you, and you don't see the value, you don't see the cost, and so it's helping.
It's fine if you want to talk to everyone. It's just really expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one will care.
But one of the things I like doing, because I always have clients that they're saying that they reach everybody and they want to reach everybody. One of the ways that I like to follow up with that, and I go, okay, that's great. Who do you currently have right now that's working on your Spanish website and your Japanese website and your French website and your, because right now your website's only in English. So if you want to reach everyone, and which of your product offerings help out newborns? Because I don't see that one either. It seems like you need to be. So it's just helping them see you're already not reaching everyone.
Yes.
You already can't reach everyone, right? So we're just wanting to focus that in more.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing, because you're already not doing it. And like you said, you can if you want to, but that's very expensive to do.
The best thing I want to give I've been really good at sales my entire life, not to brag, but I have. But then I learned something from Christo, our common friend, and that actually changed the way that I'm selling. So I thought I was good, but I actually got much better after he told me this 5 years ago. In our first call, I was in the Future Pro group, his community. I know he said, just go out there and try this. And I had a meeting in the afternoon, so I'm like, I'm just going to try it. So he said, try to never sell. Like, don't sell anything. Just ask questions. And I was like, okay, I do ask questions, but I kind of pitch a little bit. Okay, so I will try it. And I did. The first time I tried exactly what he said, like I took notes and I was like a good student for once. I took notes and I actually did the work. For 45 minutes, I was just asking questions to a CEO. And I asked those questions that we talk about now, like, what do you want to achieve with your business? Like, what are your core values? Why is that important for you? What do you want to become? Who's your target audience? What do they think about you today? Like, what are your competitors? Just ask questions. What do you want to achieve? Like, how would that look like? And after 45 minutes, he was just looking at me and he's like, oh, damn, you're good. Like, how can we work with you? I'm like, does he realize that I haven't said anything? I just asked him questions, but he felt probably so seen and heard that I actually did care about him. And he hired me. So credit to that is to Christo, because I actually do think that was like one of the best advice I got. That do just ask those questions that will make people feel like, I get it. This makes sense, that I actually understand why I want to invest in marketing and in long-term branding and understand who we are, who we talk to, and how we are different. And if we're not doing that, we're not saving time or money by not doing that. We're just wasting a lot of money and time of doing marketing the wrong way. And if you want to avoid that, you better do the strategy before you start taking action on things. So yeah, the best way to help someone to understand that is to ask all these questions, which is basically the output of a strategy.
Bonus question. This is it. This isn't, something for business specifically. This is for you. And I was thinking about this as you were talking. And this really is a bonus question. If someone has made it this far, you're locked in and you're just liking the vibes that Anneli's giving. And I understand why, because I like the vibes too. Anneli, I really do feel like you are you're just such a sweet and hospitable soul. I don't think, obviously I'm not saying that you are the totality of perfection and, you don't have shadows or anything like that. But there is just something about you that is so kind and hospitable and welcoming and warming. And I just think the way to interact with people. And I got to see it in person whenever we got to spend a week together on that fishing trip. Mm. What is it about brand strategy and what you have done and what you're currently doing? And for those that are listening, Anneli mentioned she's not, for the most part, really, and she doesn't take on clients anymore to work with. She's now working with other creatives and helping them integrate their own brand strategy businesses and build those out and that stuff. What is it about what you do that you love it so much, you find fulfillment in it? Because, it's like I could almost see you being like a counselor or a therapist or, just someone that is just helping people, loving and nurturing people. And, but you found so much fulfillment in what you are doing, and it brings out these qualities about you. So just personally, why, what is it about what you do what's the meaning, what's the fulfillment that it's giving you?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things, if I can kind of expand on that a little bit. Okay, so one thing is I have a community that I'm building called Brand Rebels for Good. That's from my heart. What Brand Rebels for Good means that I've been working with focus on sustainability since 2011. And I truly believe that government and all of us, we can't make all this change that needs to be done right now, because there's a lot of things that, we need to change in the world. And I think that brands and companies have a responsibility to actually be a force for good. Because I know that could happen. Just you can look at Patagonia, you can look at Oatly, you can look at a lot of other people. And there is like a movement out there right now that with brands who lead that, who become change makers. So it's not just about profit, it's actually making a positive impact in the world. So that means something for me. And if I can have an opportunity to train like Padawans, I train a group of people who can go out there and do what I've been doing. It's not enough for me to just do it myself. I want to train hundreds, thousands of creatives who can go out there and market to people and help all these business owners how to actually create brands that are a force for good. That's my bigger mission. So that's why I train people. And I also help business owners who's doing that journey, but I do most coaching now. So I don't do like the whole brand strategy work, but it's a ripple effect. The more I can train, the more people can go out there and actually make a positive impact. So that's part of it. Then it's me and the underdogs, meaning I always had a heart for underdogs. And in my world, the creatives are a little bit of an underdog. Because in the corporate world where I don't feel like I belong, I've just been there for a number of years. But I'm that crazy person, I have like allergic reactions to Excel sheets. I'm in front of the whiteboard. I'm a divergent thinking person with ADHD and million of ideas. I wear Nike sneakers when everyone else dress up. Like I'm just different. So the creatives are more like my people. And I just wonder, why don't you let them into this, the C-suite table? Why don't you listen to people who have a divergent creative thinking? Because they know how to solve business problems too. So I feel like I'm kind of a champion for creatives to help creatives be like, you don't have to be just makers and order takers. I want you to actually step up and to facilitate and lead those conversations because you are needed out there. We don't just need business Excel sheet people. We need people who are creative and can solve problems. So that's the second part. And I think the third part for me is that, I don't know, but I love working with people and relationships and understanding human behavior. And sometimes a topic like brand strategy sounds so like boring and just like a theory. And it's like, it's everything but that. It's about me wearing the hat and representing the customers. And I can go in there and I can talk to these like C-suite level people or boardrooms. And I'm not afraid. I ask stupid questions. I represent the customer and I'm like, I have no freaking idea what you're talking about. You need to talk so I understand. Because otherwise no one would understand. I'm just extremely direct and honest. And I like that. I like making this like, instead of difficult, I want to make it simple and easy to understand and human, and people feel something. So I think that's all these things together just makes me love working with brands because I actually think brands can make a difference.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer to why I love it. But I think we're all change makers, and sometimes I just need to train the right people so they can go out there and make that change in the world. The Michael Jackson song like that.
Yep.
There's like a man in the mirror and we all need to take a look at ourselves and make that change. And that's where it starts.
That's the why, everyone. You heard it from Anneli herself. Michael Jackson is why she's doing everything that she's
He was
doing.
like, I still love him, but he was like my biggest idol growing up. But I need to tell you the story before we end this, the extra material.
Okay, go. Yeah, tell it.
Okay. When I was about 18, maybe 19.
Uh-huh.
I dropped off school, of course, so I couldn't get into university. I already moved from home. And maybe you can relate a little bit to this, but I'm like, how do you get a job when you don't have an education? But I was like, what am I really good at? I'm actually really good at talking to people. And I'm kind of social, likable. People like vibe with me, and I get along with a lot of people. I'm like, that could be a good asset to have. Like, I can work with that. So what I did was I got a job, and my job was to be a matchmaker. So I was basically the prototype of Tinder, but you can't swipe. But I was basically out there as like a person connecting people. So I was out in train stations, shopping malls, all places where there were a lot of people. And I basically just went to a person. I said, hello, I'm Anneli. Are you single? And they like, it was really fun. Think of me, I'm like 18, 19, like a blonde Swedish guy. I'm like, are you single? And all men were like, it depends on why you ask.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, no, but I just want to, see if you want to meet someone. And then I went to a woman that I thought was a good match. I'm like, are you single? So I basically took people, information, and we did some matchmaking. So it's basically like Tinder, but so I think that's so funny. Sometimes I think about this when people talk about Tinder, because I've been like with the same person for 30 years. So I don't even know what Tinder is. I just know that it exists. Yeah. But it's funny when I think about it, because I'm like, I was basically Tinder. And then I think of all my friends who are shy introverts. I'm like, that must have been the biggest nightmare for people, because I basically had to talk to only strangers. But not only that, I just asked if they were single and wanted to matchmake them. I mean, how embarrassing can you be? And I loved it. So I would probably have done that for years, unless the police just stopped the entire business, because it shows that it wasn't even legal. So that's my match. So I'm thinking maybe this is destiny. I started as a matchmaker, and what I do now in brand strategy is basically matchmaking.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself trying to lean back? Like you ever like come across like a friend, or you meet someone like who's single, and you automatically kind of start thinking, wait a second, I know a couple people.
I do that all the time. My husband is like, oh my God, can you just stop matchmaking people all the time? I do it all the time. Can't help myself.
That's brilliant. Well, it does speak to your love working for people, and I think your ability to connect with people on that level. Well, Anneli, I so enjoyed our talk and our conversation. I love the bonus question and the post-credit scene about your matchmaking stuff. I'll have you on again, and we're just going to go only into the matchmaking stuff. It's going to be a whole episode. We're going to get every entrepreneur in a solid relationship, married, hitched up.
But you know what you and I could definitely talk about. I mean, but you can come on my podcast, because I think we should have a conversation, because you and I really connected really fast. I mean, when we met.
Yep.
And I think that would be really interesting to kind of dive a little bit deeper into why we think that happened, but also how we connect, how we do it, really try to break that down, because I think we both just being ourselves and do it on intuition. Like, we don't think about it. There's no like intentional, I want to be like, it's just, it just happens. But I think it could actually help a lot of people who have a little bit more difficult time to network or to connect with people emotionally, how to do it. Because I think both and I we open up really fast, and maybe that's why we kind of make ourselves a little vulnerable, and it's easier then to connect. So it would be interesting to kind of have a conversation about how do we connect with people?
Yeah. Well, especially given the fact that, again, I know people would not think this of either of us, especially if they hear this conversation or hear about you being a matchmaker, but especially since we have that introverted bent about us, when it comes to people, it's
not me.
Yeah.
You're introverted, right? Are you introverted?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so Yeah. Okay. So so you would say you are extroverted?
No, I mean, I score 95% extroverted. 95%.
I thought. Oh,
No.
I thought that you always saw. Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, then that was a miss on my part.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, then that's perfect then, because then we can talk about both sides of it.
I just
from
have
the
a lot of
extroverted side to the
introverted
introverted
friends,
side.
but I thought you were an extrovert because you're so outgoing. So that's so funny that we're just totally misread. Okay, so let's not have a conversation about, or let's talk about connect, but not reading people, obviously, because.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
That's hilarious. No, that's perfect. Well, no, I really would, because I do think that is a missed skill set. I was actually talking to, I was talking to Andres. So for those of you that are listening, Anneli and I are both involved with Chris Doe's community, The Future. I'm one of the Future Pro Group members. Anneli's like a contributor. She's a grandmaster, teacher, sage, a part of that community. But
yeah.
Exactly. And a member.
Yeah.
But one of the people in the community, his name is Andres. And I was talking to him and I was telling him that like, one of the skill sets, like if I were to like build like a digital course or like anything, it wouldn't so much be about like marketing as much as it would be about like how to be someone that people enjoy, like how to be someone people like talking to, people connect with, because so many opportunities that have happened in my life, it is through relational connection or networking, if you want to call it networking, but it's been through that, right? So like we talk about, marketing or branding, how to build, how to help people know you, like you, and trust you, the whole know, like, and trust. And so I'm like, dude, if I were to make a course about anything, I'd want to like make a course about like how to be someone that people know, like, and trust. Because,
I love that.
That alone has opened up more doors for me than any email marketing I've done for myself or ad that I've ran, or the opportunities that have opened up through that relational equity has just been tremendous. And so it's even why I'm like, I want to start a podcast and just talk to people.
I love
that.
You and I can have a podcast about that. I feel the same way. When I tell people, first of all, that I'm extroverted, and also I want to say that I do think that why I think you are extroverted, because I think we put people in boxes way too easy.
Absolutely.
So introvert and extrovert, it's about how we get energy, how we energize ourselves. So you kind of show up as an extrovert. That's why you're like likable, easy to connect to, all the things that we talk about. But then you might be more like how you get your energy. I get energized being around people, but both of us have this like maybe openness about us that it's easy to connect to. But I also love outreach sales. And I got most of my clients actually of coming up with ideas that I want to solve. And then I call strangers and I just like pitch an idea. And I love that. And people are like, are you crazy? I'm like, no, I can teach how to do that. So if I would also do something differently, talk about different things, I would talk about things like that, how to really like seek problems out there and how you can pitch problems like that, how to solve them to people, and also how you can emotionally connect to people when you network or when you do things. But so I think there's a lot of different things that we can go deeper into. Yeah.
Well, no, I think there's so much value in that. So, well, guys, I know you're listening and you're like, well, when does that, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It might be a podcast episode. We might be, rolling out an 8-part course on how to, become someone that you know and like and trust. We're going to work on the details. We'll update you guys on that. But last thing,
we create a waiting list. No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. We'll make a waiting list. Yeah, we'll have that ready. Exactly. Yes. I love it. It's happening, people. LinkedIn. We're going to do a LinkedIn Live. Sign up for the webinar. If people want to stay connected with you, just real quick, tell people how they can do that. And again, I know this podcast is for specifically, more business owners. However, I do know you are coaching people that are into brand strategy. So maybe there is a business owner that does do that and they do provide that service. So just real quick, how people can stay connected with you. And if someone wants to engage with your brand strategy coaching, how would they do that? I do coach also a lot of like CEOs, CMOs, like more executive coaching if someone would be interested. So, but where you can find me is on LinkedIn.
and on Instagram. That's basically where I hang out almost every day.
Perfect.
So the Anneli Hansson, Anneli Hansson, and you will probably have the links to that.
Yep.
So I would love, and people like always ask me, do you have like a, social media manager or an assistant or anything that answers? Because you always answer DMs. You're always hanging out and talk to people. Like, no, I don't have that. I do all the work myself when it comes to that. And that's one of my most important things that I do is to create content. I've been doing it almost daily for soon 5 years. And I love doing that. And I love talking to people. So if you want to follow up on this and you want to ask me of anything or an advice about something, just, send me a DM and I will answer you.
Yeah. Well, and guys, just to let you know, she's telling the truth because the first time I ever connected to Anneli, that was the way. It was, I joined the Future Pro group, but then I reached out to Anneli over LinkedIn just to tell her thank you or to brag about, she has this brand strategy course thing that's on there and I was listening to it and I loved it. And I just sent a message just to show appreciation, no expectation to hear back. And she replied and we actually started having a little conversation. And so that's why when we then go on this fishing trip, you were my person that I was like, okay, I don't know these people, but I know you. So let me get close to you while I warm up to the rest of this environment. And so she's telling the truth, guys. She's telling the truth. She will reach back out.
Yes.
Well,
thank you so
Anneli,
much for having me.
And thank you so much for being on. Seriously, I looked forward to it, and it was such a great conversation. And so, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Like Anneli mentioned, everything will be in the description for how to stay connected with her and everything she is doing. Send her a DM. Let her know that you came from the podcast, and she'll give you express attention. If you let her know that. And guys, thank you so much for listening to the episode, and we will see you in the next one.
Yeah. Bye.